This ruin in Berlin is all that remains today of this masterpiece, once the biggest, most beautiful, most innovative train station in all of Europe. This whole area used to be inside the station's hall, but now the platforms are overgrown and the ruins are a car park. But why? I've walked past this thing many times and always assumed that it was destroyed by the war. But I was wrong. The answer is way worse than that. Something almost criminal that will make you very angry to hear about. With this architectural marvel surviving the war, only to be deliberately torn down anyway. This was Berlin's Anhalter Bahnhof. Trains first ran from this site in 1841 when this was still Prussia, but this massively expanded and ornate version was opened in 1880 by Bismarck and the First Kaiser shortly after German unification. It took 6 years to build at a cost equivalent to at least $300 million today. It was the largest train station in all of Europe and rightfully became a world-famous sensation. Its 110-meter wide neo-Renaissance facade greeted all passengers headed out of Berlin, southwards towards Leipzig, Munich, Vienna, and even Rome or Athens. In the glory days of train travel, this station provided waiting rooms divided into 4 ticket classes, as well as a separated royal lounge, which the Kaiser could use to either depart from in this royal train, or used to welcome arriving foreign dignitaries. Tsar Nicholas II even disembarked here once after a journey from St. Petersburg to visit a royal wedding. A built-in underground passageway connected the station to the Grand Excelsior Hotel opposite, allowing first-class passengers to walk from their rooms to the train carriage without being rained on. It was Berlin's prestige showpiece, an imperial cathedral for the steam train era, used by luxury routes like the Orient Express, but it was also the departure point for soldiers sent to both fronts of World War I by train. These statues above me today are a modern replica, but you can see the originals in a nearby museum where they have day and night on display who used to adorn the front entrance. If these two personifications remind you of honor and glory from the sculpture on the Titanic, then you're not the only one, and the parallels don't stop there. A beautiful, innovative, pre-World War I golden era transport hub with a heavily class segregated passenger list that now no longer exists because of a tragedy. But before we get angry about the wrecking ball and all the dramatic reasons behind the demolition, there's 2 devastating elements of the human story of this place that you need to understand first. Anhalter was one of the busiest stations in the world, and during peak times like, for instance, the 1936 Olympics, over 50,000 people passed through it every day, and this made it a natural host for some of the saddest scenes of the war. The first Kindertransport train left from this station in 1938, taking Jewish children to Britain to keep them safe from rising anti-Semitic violence. And so Anhalter became known for tearful platform scenes of parents who would never see their children again, as well as the departure point for hundreds of thousands of adult Jews who were able to flee to other countries before the start of the war. But by 1942, the scenes here were even worse. Normal passenger trains were still going to Prague every day, but with 3 extra carriages attached, full of Jews, who would be ejected at the Theresienstadt camp to later be murdered. This chilling sign commemorates them and shows how many people took their final steps on German soil right here on each day. The wartime story of the building itself is quite a strange one. Hitler's lead architect didn't even like the design. They actually wanted to get rid of this station after the war as part of shedding the remnants of the old empire and wanting to remake a new Germania in their own style. And that's kind of an important detail that will come up later. Trains continued to run until February 1945, when an RAF bombing raid destroyed the roof and enough of the tracks and the train yards to finally take Anhalter out of service. And this that you can see here is the state that greeted Allied troops when they entered Berlin. It's sad to see it as a devastated shell of its former glory, but the exterior walls and most of the infrastructure were still standing. Yes, it needed a new roof and some cosmetic repairs, but it was not irreparable, as proven by this sign even saying that just 2 months after the war, trains were running from here again. So if it was savable, why would you tear this thing down? And this is where it gets insane and truly controversial, with complex arguments on both sides. Another world historical event is about to split Berlin in two, literally this time, with both human lives and this building included in its victims. When Berlin was divided, the station suddenly sat in an awful location. If you've been there, you'll know that it's just a few steps away from the location where the Berlin Wall used to stand. So Anhalter itself was suddenly in West Berlin, but all of its train lines and destinations were routed through East Germany, and cross-border transportation was, of course, illegal. So there was nowhere you could go from here, and there was nowhere whose trains could arrive here. Overnight, this grand terminus lost its entire purpose, and it stood a ghost of its former self for another 10 years until the decision was made to tear it down. And like I've said, it is heartbreaking to us now, but what else could be done? The political situation around reunification seemed hopeless, and post-war Berlin needed every cent it had to build homes and infrastructure that it could actually use, not to repair big, expensive, and effectively useless projects like this one. It was deemed too much of a risk that it would eventually fall down on its own and hurt people, so in 1960, the demolition crew was sent in. Call me dramatic, but I found it physically painful to watch this footage. We came so close to having this masterpiece exist in our era. But then a wrecking ball here, some dynamite there, and all it took was 48 hours to destroy this 100-year-old marvel and all of its history and artistry. Some did try to protest against the demolition, and that's actually why a compromise was made to keep this narrow section of the once great entrance hall as a monument. But I was also fascinated to learn that some locals actually wanted it gone because they saw any suggestion of repairing an old German building to be an attempt to bring back Nazism. Although it was, of course, designed and loved way before Nazi Germany ever existed, and Hitler's own architects actually wanted to either get rid of it, or some even wanted to turn it into a giant swimming pool. So you could argue that it's actually the other way around. Demolishing it is the more pro-Nazi thing to do. But I'm also aware that those are easy things for me to say in hindsight, and, I'm unwilling to denigrate the wishes of people who lived through and in the trauma of those decades. Now, there's a sports ground and a music venue where the hall used to be, with a tree line marking its former footprint, and turning these sidings into parks has created more green space in a city that desperately needed it. But if you want to see what that grand old hotel opposite looks like, then yeah. At least the pigeons are happy. Another 1800s marvel that was also inaugurated by the Kaiser, but crucially still exists, is the Wuppertal Suspension Railway, and you can click here to watch my deep dive on that next. After subscribing, of course. Thank you!